Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I got to tell you, interesting day. Ben Sass, one of those moments where you go, I liked Ben Sass's argument during the confirmation hearing that, when the cameras are on, people, like Ted Cruz, do kind of, what was the word that he used? Jackassery. His word. They're going to do things that, sane, rational people don't normally do. They're going to be idiots. Going to not do the right thing. I had some hope for Ben Sass. I really did. A little bit. Ben Sass today came out and said, Judge Jackson has impeccable credentials. She's got a deep knowledge of the law. She's an extraordinary person, has an amazing and extraordinary American story, just effusive with praise. But sadly, I can't vote for her. You go, whoa. Explain that. What part of, she's got impeccable credentials. She's a fantastic judge. She knows the law. She knows the job. She's a great person. She's got a great story. Everything is right where it's supposed to be. But, sorry, cameras are on. Someone's watching. Because this is where we are. This is welcome to America. Because voters are watching. The base is watching. And look, this week of the confirmation hearing wasn't about finding out where Judge Jackson's viewpoints are. It wasn't finding out, what her view on the law is. It was to get a gotcha moment. It was, she doesn't know the definition of woman. Oh, she can't. That's what it was about. It was about to feed the outrage candy for the chaos merchants. That's what it was about. Simple. And they got that. And to her credit, she didn't step on the landmine. She did a great job, I thought. But, not a profile in courage here. I mean, you get disheartened in a moment because here's somebody who's saying, look, I acknowledge his words, impeccable credentials. Impeccable. You don't just use that word out of nowhere. A deep knowledge of the law, an extraordinary person, an extraordinary American story would be an asset to the court. But you know what? Sadly, I just can't bring myself to it. Just can't pull that lever. Can't do it. Sorry, I'd really love to, because the folk back home, they wouldn't like that very much. Nah, you go, well, why? Is it because she was, nominated by a Democratic president? Probably. Is it because she's a woman? Yeah, probably could be. Because she's a black person? Yeah, probably could be. Is it because it's all of it? Yeah, probably could be. I'm not going in any one direction. Probably could be all of them. Could be the triple. Could be the hat trick. It's just the moment that we're in. This is what the Republican Party is. And, I had Republican friends saying, well, Democrats, they wouldn't vote for her either. Someone with an impeccable record, someone with a deep knowledge of the law who wasn't an ideological hack, and which, you even had Paul Ryan coming out, a former Republican vice presidential candidate, saying, look, she is a terrific choice for the court. But that doesn't matter because that's not the world in which we live. Now we're going to see where it goes. I'm excited for this to be over. and to have her seated on the court. So that we'll go from there. Good news today. Some good news. I'm going to throw some good news. It's Friday. It's good news. The Minneapolis teachers and the support staff, they reached a tentative agreement early Friday morning. Going to put an end to the 2-week strike. Some 29,000 students going to get back to the classroom. 4,500 educators and staff folks going to get back into the classroom there in what is Minnesota's largest school districts. They're going to go back and got what they needed. People go, wow, they got what they wanted. No, they got what they needed. They needed a couple extra bucks in their pockets. And this is one of those moments where you go, well, they're just greedy teachers. And you go, no, I think maybe you need to upgrade your talking points. Somebody emailed me this article from My Learning World. And this guy had written this really great article on the fact that over the last 30 years, teacher salaries have actually gone down. And you look around and you go, why are schools having such a hard time finding teachers? Why are they having such a hard time? And it's because wages have been stagnant and declining. And a teacher coming into the profession now, as they point out, because the statistics are there, you're going to earn about 11% less than you did 30 years ago. What they pointed out is starting salaries for a teacher today had kept pace with inflation from 3 decades ago. Had it kept up, it would be about $46,762. Instead, the average starting salary is $41,780, almost $5,000 less, about 11%. And you throw all this stuff in there. You throw in the cost of inflation and gas and food and everything that goes into it. And also, the teachers are always reaching into their pockets to buy stuff for their classrooms, especially young teachers. It's almost untenable. And then you throw this into the fact that first-year college graduates, a starting teacher's making 25% less than their peers, because the average new college graduate is coming out of college making somewhere around $55,000 a year. So let me see. Hold on. Now, I'm going to come out of college and I'm going to make $55,000 a year as opposed to 41. Let's see. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but it seems like simple math, basic economics. Also, there are about 560,000 fewer teaching jobs now than there were before the pandemic, because, hey, we've consolidated some of that. And the people who are teaching, they're looking to get out. Why? Because, the squeeze and look, all of the anger and the hatred and the vitriol and these conservative nitwit and Looney Tunes who are just verbally assaulting, and on some cases actually assaulting educators. I don't know that I'd want to do it. But, stop and think about it. 1980, adjusted for inflation, you're making about $46,700 a year. You're coming out of college with about $14,000 in debt. So you're not doing bad. Today, starting teacher, about $41,700. Coming out of school, about $31,000 in debt. You go, let's see, do I want to get into education? No wonder people are not going into teaching. I'm going to make less money, be deeper in debt, and I got to put up with these horrible parents. I tell you, I give credit to my kids' teachers every day. They are salt of the earth, good people, and I give them credit for being able to do what, I know I can't do. So good on them, and good on the folks in Minnesota. Good on you guys. I'd love to have them come back and share some thoughts on how well they did. Today, little education today. Today is the anniversary, the 111th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. We talked a little bit about it yesterday on the program, and if you missed yesterday's program, go back and grab the podcast, because it was a really great opportunity to hear about the book that's just come out, Talking to the Girls, Intimate and Political Essays on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, written by Marianne Trashati. I highly suggest it. But, it got me thinking today, the fact that, I couldn't help but thinking about that moment in history. and all of the things that led up to it. There was the big 1909 strike that swept across New York, where it was a general strike of the shirtwaist workers all across the street. And oddly enough, it was the triangle workers who they went back without a contract. They were the vulnerable ones. They were the ones without a voice. And for me, the lesson 111 years later is the same as it was back then. You never go back to work without a contract. You never go back without that say. Now, we know what happened. 146, mostly young women, some as young as 14 years old, were locked in this factory on the 9th and 10th floor of this building, locked in there because, hey, someone might steal some of the scraps. They might take some of the garbage home with them. So they locked them in, and you don't want them to go home either. And when the fire broke out, there was nowhere to go, except either out the window or burned to death. And a lot of people jumped out the window. And some of the stories that we had heard, because we had visited the building a couple of years back, and looking down, imagining the bodies hitting the concrete and cracking the sidewalk. And you start thinking about all the things that came after it, all the organizing that came after it. There was the Bread and Roses strike in Massachusetts. There was all of the push for on-the-job safety, a lot of the stuff that we take for granted today. And it's easy to take for granted. And you go, but Rick, all that stuff, all that's 111 years ago. We're so much better than that now. We're so beyond that. And the reality is no, we're not. This was right in the heart of the Lochner era. This was right in the heart of, if you're hungry enough and desperate enough to work in poverty conditions for desperation wages, hey, that was your fault, buddy. On you. This is, right in the heart of all of the worst labor law and the worst labor regulation in the history of the country. Right there, dead smack in it. And we're returning to those days. There's a movement in this country today as we speak who wants to take us back to the bad old days, who wants us to return to a new Lochner era of desperation, a new Lochner era of exploitation. Of, hey, if you're willing, if you're desperate enough, to work for those poverty wages in deplorable conditions, it's your liberty, it's your freedom. And we see it on the legislative side with all of the talk of deregulation. Get government out of our lives and out of our business. Job-killing regulation. Without ever talking about the people-killing lack of regulation. Because understand, there were no regulations at this time. This stuff happened because there wasn't a cop on the beat. And understand, the pendulum can swing backwards. Also, on the judicial front, there is a push to move us away from a regulatory system of government. There's a push to undo government's ability to oversee private interest. And you look at our Supreme Court, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're a religious court." No, I don't see them like that at all. I see them as a corporate court. Much more dangerous to me, the corporatists on that court who want to move us back to the days of Lochner, who believe that that the end of that era was wrongly decided. That there shouldn't be minimum wage laws. There shouldn't be maximum hour laws. There shouldn't be safe working condition laws. There shouldn't be any of the things that we take for granted today. Those should be things between you and your employer. And again, if you're hungry enough and you're desperate enough to, skirt around the edges, that's between you and your boss. Because you're equals, right? Open door policy. Because you're equals, bargaining on equal footing. That's what they want you to believe. But the reality is you're not. Unless you have a contract, unless you're organizing collectively to bargain with the boss on something of equal footing. Sorry, you're not equal. And sadly, I see us moving back toward the days of Lochner. And it's days like today that make me go, we're a lot closer to those days than we were yesterday. And sadly, as my working days come closer to the end than to the beginning, well, we're closer to repeating history than not. So on this day, that's kind of where my mind has taken me. That there are these forces, and look, sadly, it's the Republican Party and some corporate Democrats, because we need to be business friendly. We need to help corporate America. They need to make profit. And what we do is, well, we sacrifice a little bit. We need to be a little more giving. And what's it mean? Well, it means trouble for you and me. It is what it is. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a second of the program. Make sure you share it with friends, neighbors, coworkers, all of that. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's being reported that the U.S. military spent nearly $150,000 at Trump properties. And I'm going, wow, I'm actually surprised it wasn't more. To be honest, $150,000 doesn't sound all that much when you consider that, how much the Secret Service spent, how much they spent on other things. I would actually like to get a real accounting of how much his properties made out. I know there's the big lawsuit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But there's let's talk about it now. Actually, have you read Trump's angry manifesto? I mean, it looks like something you'd see after. It looks like you'd see someone write it after a bad divorce after a week-long bender. I mean, it's riddled with nonsense and grievance, lots of finger pointing. He did this, she said that. Wah! I mean, it's really. In fact, CNN described it this way, said it's rife with factual inaccuracies and some of the same grandiose and exaggerated false claims that Trump has made dozens of times, largely rehashing grievances that he has complained about for years. It claims Democrats and government officials perpetrated a grab bag of offenses from racketeering conspiracy to malicious prosecution, computer fraud, and theft of secret internet data. Yeah, theft of secret internet data from a guy who doesn't internet. Yeah, and my favorite part, the whole thing, the law firm that filed it. Dewey, Cheatham and House going, wow. Who'd you get to file this? Ambulance chasers, I'm sorry, personal injury lawyers. Ambulance chasers. Like in a strip mall in Florida. So these are like strip mall Florida lawyers, divorce, bankruptcy. Do you have a problem with your RV dealer or RV manufacturer? Call the Legal Brains. Yes, their website is legalbrains.com. I'm sorry, if you're advertising Legal Brains, I gotta wonder where Trump got this. Was he up at 3:00 in the morning, and since Twitter's kind of thrown him off, was he just flipping through the yellow pages or something because he was bored? I don't know, and just chose something. But Legal Brains. Oh, gee. For zombies, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, their tagline, because I went to their Facebook page, which was fabulous, by the way. All six of them, all six people. Lawyers you want between you and your problems. That's their tagline. The lawyers you want between you and your problems. They say we are strategists and trial lawyers. In fact, we are a dynamic team of Florida attorneys who couple experience with vigor. We know your legal problems are serious, and our law firm is devoted to giving our clients relief. I'm sure the massage parlor next door would probably give you more. But hey, he's got a law firm, and the law firm has filed the suit. And I'll tell you, I am really hopeful that this goes forward. Because once and for all, I want to hear these right-wing, bloviating outrage monkeys finally to stop with the Russia hoax. Wasn't a hoax. It's documented. Over 120, call it what you want, coordination, operational synergy, call it whatever you want, whatever buzzwords you need, where campaign of Trump, Russian assets, doing things together during the campaign, however you want to make that out to be, it happened. Now, did it swing the election? I can't say. I'm not going to say. But to say that these things didn't happen, sorry. Now, I do want it all fleshed out in public. And thanks to this lawsuit by Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, discovery is going to be brilliant. And I'm hoping the judge lets this go forward. I really am. I'm hoping the judge goes, go. And I'm hoping that the lawyers that they've sued, like Mark Elias, rips these storefront lawyers all new ones. In fact, multiple new ones in places that Dewey had never imagined. And in public so that we can all see exactly what's going on. Because look, I think at some point we've got to know. We have to know. Just my view. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got lots to get to. Stick around. Right back after this. And oh, hey, by the way, podcast. Did I mention we got a podcast? Yeah, we do. We got a really great podcast. If you miss any of the show, we've got it right there for you. Just go to thericksmithshow.com, download it, share it. Great stuff. Right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. That was the day Centralia Coal Mine Number 5 exploded, killing 111 miners in Centralia, Illinois. The explosion occurred just as the day shift was ending. Those not killed instantly were trapped and died from their burns or the afterdamp. Words scrawled on the wall of the mine read, "Look in our pockets. We all have notes. Please give them to our wives." State inspectors had been forewarning mine owners about the dangers of accumulated combustible coal dust for years before the explosion, but were ignored. Illinois Mine Inspector Driscoll Scanlon had been filing reports since 1942 about deteriorating conditions. The demand for coal during wartime had increased production at the expense of safety. In the aftermath of the explosion, John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers of America, called a work stoppage in memory of the dead miners. He also held Secretary of the Interior Julius Krug guilty of criminal negligence. Lewis accused Krug of having failed to enforce existing mine regulations. In response, Krug ordered that 518 mines remain closed for inspection. The House and Senate proceeded to organize hearings on mine safety. They demanded that the Bureau of Mines continue to pass inspection findings on to the proper state agencies. Given the power mine owners had at the state level, these instructions ensured no improvements in mine safety would occur. It would be another 22 years before any real change occurred at the federal level.
It happened an hour ago, way down in this tunnel of coal. The gas caught fire from somebody's lamp, and the miners are choking in smoke.
Labor History on 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Let's talk pills. To treat everything from allergies to heart problems, half of Americans take a prescription medicine every day, and nearly all of us reach for the pill bottle on occasion. It's perfectly safe, though, because the Food and Drug Administration regulates the ingredients that go into those medicinal compounds, right? Yes, assuming they're produced in the USA. Aren't they? Mostly, no. Take antibiotics. The New York Times reports that ingredients for the majority of these bacteria fighters are now made almost exclusively in China and India, as are the components of dozens of other major drugs. Unbeknownst to most Americans and to our doctors, China has become the world's preeminent supplier of medicines. As one major drug company puts it, if tomorrow China stopped supplying pharmaceutical ingredients, the worldwide pharmaceutical industry would collapse. What's at work here is mindless globalization and deregulation. Our politicians threw open the U.S. market to drug imports while also letting foreign manufacturers go uninspected and unregulated. So, companies located in China can cut corners and undercut our own regulated pill makers. America's last producer of penicillin's ingredients, for example, shut down in 2004, leaving us dependent on China. FDA, our supposed watchdog, doesn't even know where a drug's ingredients come from. Why? Because drug companies say they don't like to reveal their sources. So they don't. The Times found that one federal database lists the existence of about 3,000 foreign drug plants that ship to the U.S., while another lists 6,800. No one knows which is correct, if either. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is ridiculous. For the sake of America's health, security, and economy, let's regulate all pill makers and rebuild our own industry.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the headline, here it is, the headline, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Headline reads, should Texas punish abortions by putting teen girls and women to death or not? Really? Yeah, that's the debate now. If you have an abortion, should we kill you? This is how the Republican debate has gone. It's no longer about just ending Roe versus Wade. This is really now about drilling down. And look, the week of confirmation hearing, wow, have we gotten into some crazy, crazy space. And here to share some thoughts on the crazy space, I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. You can check out his stuff over at dailybeast.com. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, should we execute women? Should we take those teenage girls who get into trouble and then have an abortion? Should we take them out back and hang them? Should we execute them?
Well, I'll tell you, don't say the Republicans didn't tell you exactly what they wanted to do. I mean, this is black and white. This is said proudly and in public. I mean, these are the people who worried that electing Ilhan Omar would mean Sharia law was coming to America And here we're doing something that's in some cases equivalent and even further than a lot of fundamentalist nations. And the best that the Republicans can muster on this was one of the candidates saying they don't think that it's necessary to execute an 18-year-old woman for having an abortion, meaning that they think they can maybe be persuaded if you can just sell them on this. And it's humorous in a terrible way, but it's also very deadly serious. I mean, this affects real lives.
Yeah.
And it further dehumanizes women who have faced incredibly oppressive measures in Texas.
No, I mean, this week has been just weird because all of the things that we've been talking about on this show for years, of where Republicans have wanted to take us back to, basically wiping out the 20th century, they have come right out with straight faces and told us ending contraception, going after interracial marriage, the whole, all the LGBT stuff, all of the insanity around that. And, of course, the abortion thing. They've been out front, and you listen to the right-wing outrage merchants, boy, they've been all over this stuff.
Yeah, and it goes farther than any sort of, we're so far beyond like small government conservatism, intent of the founders. The founders weren't executing women for having abortions in the 1790s, something that is surprisingly well recorded. They were not taking away fundamental ideas of privacy, as in these states where you can now find yourself in court for leaving the state for a reason that displeases the government. This is a remarkable amount of authoritarianism that Republicans are asking their voters to accept. And the cheer at this debate where this death penalty for women was brought up was, abortion is murder and that should have consequences. And this was a happy, festive environment where we're talking about how to most effectively make women suffer for exercising their constitutional rights. I mean, the crazy is all that is left in this party.
Wow. Yeah, wow. And that's all I can come back with. But here's the thing, you hear the folks on the right scream, well, Democrats want to do all this stuff, and maybe Democrats do want to do some stuff. But Republicans are actually doing this stuff. We're seeing them move legislation in all of these states. There's a massive push, a wave of bills targeting LGBTQ people. There's a massive wave of attacks on transgender people. And look, I don't pretend to know everything about the transgender issue, but I do know one thing. I don't want government involved in it. That I do know. And it used to be something, I think, it used to be something that conservatives used to agree with me on.
Yeah, in the long ago. I mean, now we're at the point where I believe it's Texas passed a law specifically targeting one single trans athlete, one student by name, convened their assembly, passed legislation that was ultimately vetoed after it turned out that a majority of Republicans actually believe government should stay out of regulating this kind of morality. And this is why I say Republicans don't realize how far they're going, how far beyond many of their own base who will vote Republican because they are wealthy and don't want to pay taxes, but not if it means that their daughter, who's at Texas Tech, is going to get lynched if she gets pregnant. I mean, this is so far beyond the democracy that we're used to and the bounds of things we're used to debating that it really is a frightening position. And it's up to Democrats to make clear that this is a crisis and this is a terrifying series of events that's happening in states.
No, you're absolutely right. And what's scary to me is this newfound kind of vigilante activism that we're seeing on the right. You've seen in a couple of places these bounty hunter laws that they're really bringing community people in to spy on women, go digging through the trash. But when you start talking about should we be killing women for this stuff, I'm now starting to see lynch mobs. I'm now thinking, is this the natural course of where this goes? Well, we don't need government anymore. We can take this stuff into our own hands because, well, they've allowed it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've gone from a place where Republicans tried for decades on these small government, states' rights, legal arguments to essentially minimize government. As Reagan said, government so small you can drown it in a bathtub. But we've now evolved in the GOP to a party that rejects the idea of government at all, that on its face, any federal government protecting anyone's rights is dictatorship. Yet a state that will literally tell you, as Missouri is trying to do, that if you leave the state to get an abortion, as is your constitutional and legal right, that you've broken a law that only exists in Missouri and only exists for Missourians. And that's essentially Republicans creating their own vigilante government and saying, we no longer recognize that the Constitution is the law of the land and the Supreme Court is binding.
Yeah, I mean, we're heading for interesting times. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Max Burns. Max is a Democratic strategist, also columnist over at the Daily Beast. Make sure you check out his work, dailybeast.com. Now, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because, look, we're seeing all kind of crazy, and we're seeing, I think the only one of the shots Democrats have this November is Republicans are going so far off the beaten path that maybe even their voters are uncomfortable. But I look at the possibility that Sarah Palin's going to throw her hat in the ring. Representative Don Young passed away recently, one of the longest serving people in the history of Congress. And her statement that she might throw her hat in the ring because she's sick of the, quote, vanilla milquetoast namby-pamby wussy pussy stuff in Congress. Yeah, I mean, has her time passed? Because I look at her and I go, I don't know that Sarah Palin's crazy enough.
I just want to hear Sarah Palin say a full paragraph that isn't at least half words that she's invented in her head, that are actual words that exist. But no, I think she's got a chance. I mean, Sarah Palin paved the way for Donald Trump. And a lot of the reason I think Sarah Palin didn't do better among Republicans is because she's a woman. And there is a very deep hatred, as we see, of women, even Republican women, in Republican politics. Once they start feeling like they have a leadership role or want to have a voice in the party, they get sidelined pretty quick. But Sarah Palin, she has an audience. She can raise money, which is literally the only thing that matters in the Republican Party right now. If you can fundraise, you can be the nominee, and the party will get behind you. That's terrible for Alaska. And I would hate to think of what it would mean to have another of the Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene clique in Congress.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy how far they've gone down the path. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Max Burns. You got a thought, question, comment? We want to hear it. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Let's go to the phones. Got Julie on line one. Julie, what's on your mind?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Say, Rick, I don't think most people in America are aware of this, but abortion was legal in America up until about the Civil War, up until 1865. And these abortions were done by what we would call midwives,
right?
Women helping women. Well, the doctors kind of got jealous, shall we say. They also wanted to sincerely make the care of women more professional. And so you had to be a doctor to do this, and, of course, women couldn't go to medical school. So women lost the right to an abortion in America in about 1865. The other piece of information I wanted to give is I was in college in the early 70s, and I was 21 years old, and I went to a doctor because I wanted birth control. I happened to be in the state of Virginia. And the doctor said, well, are you getting married next month? I said, no. He said, well, then you can't have birth control. Wow. I realized just a few years ago that birth control for single women in the early 70s was illegal.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to throw out those two pieces of information. Abortion used to be legal in America.
Yeah. Are you surprised we're fighting these fights again?
Well, I tell you, I would have been really depressed, when I was in college in the 70s. I'm so glad that no one told me that in 50 years we would not have a woman president. I'm glad I didn't know that. Yeah. So, it's appalling. They say one of the reasons young women are not fighting as hard to keep abortion laws is because they feel that they can take the pill. the abortion pill. And so that may be true. I'm not sure.
Yeah, until that goes away. I appreciate the call, Julie. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
What do you think about that, Max? I mean, the reality is men took it away from women. Men took it away. Men screwed it up again. Because I've said if men had to have children, we would have drive-through abortions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is this sense, you mentioned of fighting this fight again. But for a lot of people, especially Black and brown women, this fight never stopped. One of the biggest missteps Democrats made in the last 20 years was starting to really feel like abortion rights were safe, that they were protected by a somewhat balanced Supreme Court, that the weight of the law was on their side. And we're seeing now that when one party decides that the law no longer matters, when they decide that they can make their own little federal government in their states, that whole protection doesn't count for much. If the Supreme Court will let an unconstitutional act like Texas's bounty hunter bill stay in effect while they debate it, then it is effectively the law. And that's little protection. I mean, that's lowered abortions in Texas by 10%. And that's way more than a number. That's real people who are having real health complications from that. And, this has to be a fight that we are always fighting. We can never feel that this is a done deal, because it is not.
It's incredible where we are, and I can't believe we're in this position. And sadly, I think Julie's right. I think that people are a little complacent, because I'm of the position, why aren't women outraged? Why aren't there people racing into the streets? Why isn't there more? Why does it seem like I'm angrier about what's going on than most women are? And I think she's right. I think a lot of people think, well, we'll just figure it out until those things aren't available. And then maybe, I don't know, but I got to take a quick break here. Can you stick around through the break?
Yeah, sure.
Let's take a quick break. I want to get your thoughts on the other side. Stick around. You've got a thought, question, comment, I want to hear it. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So, like I said, Sarah Palin's talking about running for Congress to fill Don Young's spot, because, she's tired of those vanilla, milquetoast, namby-pamby, wussy-pussy stuff going on in Congress. Because that's exactly how she talks. Welcome back. We've got our good friend Max Burns here, Democratic strategist, daily columnist over at the Daily Beast. Check out his stuff over at dailybeast.com. Max, thanks for sticking around through the break. Again, sure. What are your thoughts on Palin?
I just think that people are wrong to discount her if they are. I think she's going to be a fundraising force, but she also has the opportunity to be a huge distraction for the GOP. I mean, she sucks the oxygen out of a room when she's on television, and she has a way, like Donald Trump, of hijacking the agenda, which could end up working in Democrats' favor. But I just wonder how much this Alaska race is going to get national attention in a year of crisis upon crisis upon crisis.
Yeah, it's my problem is if Republicans do take back the House, what we're going to end up with is a Darrell Issa kind of just hearing madness. And today the story was Issa's spearheading an investigation into something really deep and important. Got to get into Hunter Biden's laptop because we got to know about Hunter Biden, the censorship and the cover up by the media, Max, because we got to know what Hunter Biden was doing.
The conspiracies just flow like water now, and it's because this is what happens to a party that's lost or driven out anyone who knows how to actually do policy or write law or govern. It's a party that's designed entirely around the media cycle and around Fox News. And success is the ability to get on TV, raise your brand, and raise money, not to produce policy that works for anybody, not to say things that make sense. I mean, Ginny Thomas, all of this, Sarah Palin, the conspiracies about Hunter Biden, there's just going to be more of this as we go on because the Republican Party has lost any taste for actual governing. It's just going to be media outrage the whole way through.
Yeah, it's the outrage machine. The chaos merchants need it because, hey, it drives ratings, doesn't it? But here's the thing. And, if Republicans do take back the House, the end of the January 6th commission, we're not going to get to the bottom of that. And, who's going to walk? Ginny Thomas. And, what we're finding out, people are going, hey, we're finally finding out about Ginny Thomas, all this stuff that's going on. I've known about her and her shenanigans for years. She is someone who has been tuned into all of these right-wing groups and at the front of this stuff for years. And here's the thing. She doesn't get Mark Meadows' cell phone if she's not Clarence Thomas's wife. I'm sorry. Call me whatever you need to, but she doesn't get that if she's not married to Clarence Thomas.
No, and she knows that too. I think this Ginny Thomas stuff is really enlightening in the sense that for a lot of Democrats, and a lot of Democrats I've spoken to who like to think of QAnon, Trumpism as this bottom-up thing, that it's uneducated working class people who don't know any better. But it's not. I mean, this is deeply ingrained in the Republican Party. Ginny Thomas has been in the party her whole life. She's one of the most prominent conspiracy theorist peddlers in the party. And she's not like Josh Hawley, who does this so that he can get votes and maybe win an election. She's a true believer. She really believes the election was stolen. She really believes Joe Biden should be executed. And she has access to people with immense power who seem to either nod along and humor her or outright agree with her.
Yeah, no, it's crazy stuff. Just crazy, crazy stuff. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 2. Alice, how are we doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I can't complain. What's on your mind?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I find it amazing that Ginny Thomas pushing the idea of the elites stealing an election when what is more elite than a wealthy, middle-aged white woman who is married to a Supreme Court justice, who is in touch with the president? I mean, is this not an elite?
Yeah, she is most certainly elite. You put her into that category. My question earlier in the week with Mike Braun's comments from Indiana about interracial marriage, would Clarence Thomas have to rule on that case, and then would it invalidate his own marriage, and would that throw her out of the house, and would that be a good divorce scheme?
Might be. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up was these abortion laws. I get really fired up over it because 1 in 6 women every year are sexually assaulted or raped. 1 in 6.
Wow.
And my great grandmother was raped 3 times in her life, and unfortunately, she had a child result from each one of the rapes. And the first one occurred when she was in Poland. She was raped before she left to come to the United States. The second one was when her husband, my second great-grandfather, was killed by the mining police, and they were thrown out of their home in, so my mind goes blank. Anyways, Winburn, just before the Winburn massacre and strike occurred. She was drug out of the house and she was raped by the mining police. And then the third time was she had went on with her life and she was raped again. And that's not the only one. I mean, and I am just so upset about the idea of them wanting women to have to bear a child to the rapist. and it just aggravates me, and it gets me so fired up.
Yeah,
it's pathetic.
It's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. Alice, I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You as well. I mean, look, Max, when you look at this, I mean, when you're talking about rape and incest and all of this stuff, they're not even, making exceptions for that anymore. I mean, at least, a couple of years ago, they go, oh, of course, for rape and incest, we'll make exceptions. Now it's nothing. You're getting none of that now.
Yeah, and they've realized they no longer need to compromise, that they've spent years building up these state house majorities, and now they have enough votes to do what they want. There's no need for them to pay lip service to democracy anymore. And you look at this, over a third of Republicans believe that abortion should be legal in at least some circumstances. That's almost always rape and incest. So these bills go way farther than even the Republican Party as a whole wants. But it's what the donors want. And this is a party that is captured by money and by the need to raise money from their big donors. So they'll do what they want, regardless of what anyone else wants.
Yeah, we are most certainly in dangerous times. Now, what's interesting is I saw Senator Richard Blumenthal is saying, hey, I think Clarence Thomas has to testify. I think he should voluntarily appear before the January 6th Commission to resolve questions about his wife's texts. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, one part is that I've lost faith in the January 6th committee to do anything meaningful. We were promised primetime hearings, big testimony. So far, we succeeded in charging Steve Bannon for contempt, and yet there's not even a timetable for when that may be heard in court. If you look at like the Robert F. Kennedy hearings over organized crime, you look at the Benghazi hearings, the joke that was, but they were done in prime time, in front of cameras. They brought people in and they made news. And those have become things that are deeply embedded in our cultural memory, for better or worse. And this committee's done none of that. I would like to see Clarence Thomas brought forward to testify on his competence to continue serving in this role. And that's not because he decides things in a way I don't like. It's because his wife attempted to foment a coup d'etat against the United States government. And that he should have to speak up about that.
No, I don't disagree. And we're in this position where there's a lot of questions, and have been a lot of questions about him and her relationships to these far right groups for years. This isn't new, Max, and you know this as well as anyone.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is new. She's been in these groups for years, and there's been a lot of questionable behavior here.
Yeah, she was a lead voice about all of the alleged Clinton murders during Bill Clinton's presidency. There has not been a conspiracy theory on the right that Ginny Thomas has not in some way amplified or legitimized among her base. And she brings money and organization in addition to a voice. She's not just praising QAnon, she's raising money to bus people in for the January 6th rally that became an attack on our government.
Yeah.
So she's doing far more than most people.
No, it's crazy. 30 seconds I got. What do you think of Newt Gingrich getting all the GOP together for a big powwow on how they're going to return to power and the scheme that they're going to come up with to do that?
I'm glad that he's found time in his busy schedule of writing space-themed fiction books to figure out how to really put the dagger in democracy here for good. But I wouldn't sleep on it. I mean, Newt Gingrich is a skilled communicator. I may disagree with him, but the man can sell a message.
Yes, he can.
We need to be wary of that.
I'm right there with you. Max, I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Our good friend Max Burns. Make sure you check out his work over at Daily Beast, dailybeast.com. We're going to take a quick break right back after this. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a second. From iTunes to iHeart, Podbean to Stitcher, and everywhere in between. Quick break. Back after this.
I thought we were going to die. We barely made it into the room. 5-10 more seconds, we would have been in the hallway, which is nothing.
Deadly tornadoes leave trail of destruction in New Orleans and Texas. Ukraine's nuclear agency warns forest fires around Chernobyl could release plumes of radiation. Plus, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spurring Europe to abandon fossil fuels faster.
All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Take that, Putin. We're not going to buy our gas from a war criminal. We're going to buy it from the good guys, Saudi Arabia.
Yep, this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, climate change-related disaster after disaster after disaster in Louisiana and in Texas. It just seems to never end down there.
I know, sadly. Louisiana's Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards declared a state of emergency after at least 2 tornadoes left a trail of destruction in densely populated parts of New Orleans Tuesday night, including a powerful EF3 tornado that lifted homes off their foundations and killed at least one person. It was part of the same system that spawned dozens of tornadoes in Texas. The New Orleans tornadoes knocked out power to thousands just 7 months after Hurricane Ida heavily damaged the city's electric grid, and it's a region that has been pummeled repeatedly by multiple hurricanes over just the last 3 years.
It has, and you would think that in Texas and Louisiana, huge fossil fuel industry down there, they would start to get the picture after all of these hurricanes, these floods, these wildfires, and now these tornadoes.
In a site visit, Governor Bel Edwards warned residents that the death toll could rise.
Take a moment to remind people that in natural disasters, especially when you have power outages, a lot of times the biggest loss of life isn't from the storm itself, it's from the operation of generators. And so we ask people to please be safe. Make sure that that generator is operated at a safe distance from your home, never in the home.
More than 600 buildings sustained damage, many of them homes still awaiting repairs after Hurricane Ida last fall. As far as the influence of climate change on this specific storm system, the data is somewhat mixed on tornadoes, but studies do show that tornadoes are getting more intense, more frequent, and more likely to come in swarms, including an increase in nighttime tornadoes because of rising overnight temperatures. In Ukraine, the country's nuclear agency reported this week that Russian troops occupying the Chernobyl nuclear site have looted and destroyed a state-of-the-art laboratory that was working to improve nuclear waste management and contained radioactive samples that are now, quote, in the hands of the enemy.
They stole radioactive samples?
Yes.
That doesn't seem smart.
This is true. The agency also warned that several forest fires are burning around the Chernobyl site that could release plumes of radiation trapped in trees and soil, but that the Russian military's occupation is obstructing efforts to put out those fires.
And if you burn a radioactive forest, doesn't that send radiation into the air all over the place, including into Russia?
Yes.
And a few days ago, the Ukrainian authorities said that they had lost the ability to monitor the radiation levels near Chernobyl. Is that monitoring still down at this time?
Yes, unfortunately, it is. As we go to air, President Biden is in Europe to push European leaders to take new steps to curb the continent's deep dependence on Russian oil and natural gas that indirectly fund Russia's war machine. Biden also urged U.S. companies operating critical infrastructure, including the energy sector, to harden their defenses against potential cyber attacks, citing new intelligence. And the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spurring Europe to abandon fossil fuels faster. European countries this week backed a proposal to impose the world's first carbon border tax. That's a tariff on imports from countries that don't cut their carbon emissions.
That's good.
Germany announced it will back a European Union proposal to phase out sales of internal combustion cars by 2035.
That's good, too.
One of the world's largest reinsurers, Swiss Re, announced it is halting all business in Russia and will stop insuring most oil and gas projects.
Also good.
The Netherlands announced it will significantly ramp up the building of offshore wind farms, doubling its planned capacity by 2030.
I like it.
France announced it will end subsidies for new residential gas heaters and boost electric heat pumps instead, and will stop import of Russian gas and oil by 2027.
What is going on? Are you okay, Desi Doyen?
And finally, laggard French oil and gas company Total announced this week that it would stop buying Russian oil by the end of the year and will halt new investment in projects there, just weeks after most other major oil companies cut ties with Russia.
Well, this is just too much good news for our listeners at once. For much more on all of these stories, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you
tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, saw this story over at the AP. Evidently, giant ice shelf. Don't quite know what an ice shelf is, but I imagine it's a giant piece of ice. The size of New York City. So this is a pretty big chunk of ice. Evidently, this has collapsed in East Antarctica. They say an area long thought to be stable and not much hit by climate change. So this is supposed to be the area where, you know, things are supposed to be fairly stable. We're not supposed to be hitting this just yet. And yet we just put a giant ice cube in the drink. That will probably melt in the next couple of years. While I'm not a climatologist, this doesn't sound good. This doesn't sound helpful. But here to share some thoughts on whether maybe I'm just overreacting, I've asked Trevor Higgins to come talk with us. Trevor is the Vice President of Climate Policy at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. They've got a new piece out on achieving energy independence while supporting European allies. Maybe he's got a thought on this giant piece of ice that just broke off. Trevor, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be here.
So am I getting this right? I mean, this giant chunk of ice that broke off this ice shelf. This sounds bad.
Yeah, well, it's like the canary in the coal mine. When you have ice that was not expected to start melting at a time when temperatures in Antarctica are skyrocketing beyond anyone's expectations, it's a warning signal. And the way that an ice shelf can become unstable and collapse, it's sort of a good metaphor for other things that we depend on. Our economy right now is built on systems that are vulnerable to climate change. Our houses are, our livelihoods are. So I think we're at great risk here of seeing climate insecurity reach all of us. And we take it as a wake-up call.
Shouldn't this be one of those moments? I mean, we've seen a couple of these. I mean, there was another one that I guess just completely melted, that they go, oh, wow, this melted, 2 years faster than we thought it was going to melt. And we keep seeing these warning signs. Hey, over here, another warning. And yet we don't listen. Shouldn't this be another one of those things going, hey, maybe off the fossil fuels a little bit, maybe start renewables, maybe, what's going on in Russia, maybe not deal with Saudi Arabia, maybe not deal with horrible dictatorial types for your energy, maybe save the planet a little bit. Shouldn't we learn that lesson? I don't know, a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny. We've got such a good option for dealing with these problems. It's time to just say yes, right? Uncontrolled fossil fuels make us vulnerable to foreign petrostate dictators. They destabilize the climate. They're costly for the economy, and they're increasingly unreliable. And they're vulnerable to the very same climate change that they're helping to fuel. So the solution here is pretty straightforward, and we should just get on with it. It's time to build a clean energy economy.
Yeah, but you don't have a nifty little slogan like "Drill, baby, drill." That fits neatly on a bumper sticker. So do you have a bumper sticker?
I'd say 100% clean future is what we need. But what's funny is
that's not a good bumper sticker.
Yeah, it's a little too long. I don't know. We need more like, I don't know, something you put on the backpack you take on the transit system. Maybe.
How about live, baby, live?
Live, baby, live. I like it. We've been drilling for a long time. And so since 2005, oil in the United States production is up more than twice. We've doubled our production. And somehow still we're dependent on foreign oil, and we're vulnerable to disruptions in the global market. And it, I think, proves that was a flawed approach that didn't deliver what it was said to deliver. If we want real energy independence now, what we need to do is accelerate the transition to renewables, to heat pumps, to solar panels, to electric vehicles. And doing those things are going to free us from this dependence on what's ultimately an unreliable source of energy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this moment, and I'm looking at what's going on in Russia, and the sad reality is, I think this was predictable. I think a lot of people, a lot of military people I've known over the years have said, Russia's unstable. You don't want to really cozy up the way we have and be as dependent, especially in Europe. Why would you tie your hitch to that? And look, they're struggling right now, and we're going to bail them out, which means we're going to do a lot more drill baby drilling. We're going to be, their gas station for now. In fact, a couple of years ago, I had Admiral Sestak on the program, who was a congressman at the time, and he said, what we need to do? We need to crush Russia by being Europe's gas station and those Marcellus shale fields. We need to just put a pipeline to those refineries in Philly and ship it right overseas and make tons of money and be their gas station. And I'm like, I don't know, is that a good idea? But it kind of is what we're going to be doing, isn't it?
In part. I mean, it's kind of what we've done over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, the United States exported almost no natural gas. It's easy to export oil. You just put it on a tanker. But if you want to transport natural gas, you have to get it out of a pipeline where it's gas, compress it into a liquid, and then put it on a tanker, and then you ship it, and then you have to uncompress it. So you need infrastructure at both ends to make this from a gas into liquefied natural gas, and then back again. And it's difficult. And we export almost a fifth of all of the natural gas we frack in the United States. And still, it's not enough to fully support Europe. And Europe's looking at that and saying, yeah, thank you. We appreciate this amount of LNG you're producing. It's as much as you're able to export. It's as much as we're able to import. And it's still not enough to make us free from Russia. So Europe is putting together a plan. They don't want our natural gas or Russia's natural gas. They want to get off of natural gas. And they've got a good plan to do it. And ultimately, that's the only way that they're going to be free from their dependence on Russia. And it's going to be the same thing for us. So the shifting around where the natural gas comes from, replacing some of it that comes from Russia for some of it that comes from China that we supply ultimately is sort of like a shell game, and It may help in the near term. But what we really need is to get off of fossil fuels.
No, and this is where this moment, and this is where for me this moment should be. Our Manhattan Project. This should be that moment where all hands on deck. You look at we're on the brink of World War III, and a big part of it is over energy. And this should be that moment where we're going, how do we become truly independent from the rest of the world? How do we not have to deal with Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or Russia or any of these other places where there's instability and chaos? How do we do that? And we have technology that can get us to there, but we just have, one, I would argue, a bunch of bad politicians who are visionless. And two, I think we've been sold a bill of goods that, hey, that's it's impossible to do. I've got friends who don't believe that it's possible to put solar panels in places to fuel our economy and use heat pumps and geothermal and wind and tidal and all that stuff. They don't believe it's possible.
Yeah. It is foreseeable that we got into this situation. You mentioned a minute ago that people predicted we'd be caught in this situation. It's true. When Reagan was president, Russia was starting to build its natural gas pipelines into Europe. And the intelligence community said, this is going to set us up for trouble. It's going to make Europe vulnerable, and it's going to constrain our capacity to deal with then the Soviet Union. And at first, Reagan agreed. But the oil companies had something to say about that. They saw a lot of potential profit in making Europe dependent on fossil fuels. And they lobbied Congress, they lobbied the administration, and eventually Reagan caved. And those pipelines got built. And here we are today watching the repercussions of it, just like it was predicted. And we're faced with the exact same choices today.
Yep.
What sort of economy are we going to build now? And it's clear what the choices that we have to make.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up.
Possible.
It's interesting you brought up Reagan, because I remember I was a kid at the time. I remember Carter put those hot water solar panels on the White House. Going to heat the hot water with the solar panels, and the first thing Reagan did was took them off and shipped them out. And for years they heated the hot water for some college up in New England. I think they're in storage in some museum now. But for 20 plus years afterwards, they were doing the laundry and all of all of the hot water up in a small college in New England. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Trevor Higgins. Trevor is the Vice President of Climate Policy at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, their website. You want to take a look at their piece, Achieving Energy Independence While Supporting European Allies. We'll get links out on social media on how you can do that. Now, I hear a lot of people say, Trevor, we're not drilling enough. And, look at the reality is that this administration's handed out a bunch of leases, and there have been a bunch of leases out there. The problem is you pointed out a minute ago, the capacity is just not there to refine this stuff. The capacity is not there to deal with this stuff because companies haven't built the infrastructure, and they're sitting on a lot of these leases. So, again, all of the, Biden did this, not really true.
Right. The Biden administration, I think much to the frustration of environmentalists, has been handing out permits to drill on public lands and is handing out leases to drill on public lands. And the oil companies are sitting on more than 9,000 permits. They can drill if they want to today, as soon as they put the money into it. And they're not 5,000 of those, so more than half of those permits that are unused were granted last year by the Biden administration. And when people are going to these oil companies and asking, prices are really high right now. What are you doing? Are you going to increase production? And you can see the quotes that they give to the media and to their own shareholders to say, no, we rather like having high prices right now. It's part of our plan to recoup the losses from 2 years ago when oil prices went negative.
Yep, and you got to cash in, man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this is not a problem of supply choices made by the Biden administration. This is a problem of fossil fuel markets being a global market, vulnerable to the disruptions internationally, vulnerable to manipulation by petrostate dictators like Putin.
And our Wall Street speculators and corporate greed. Let's not let them off the hook either. Now, during the break, you had mentioned that the president's overseas, had talked about areas of cooperation with Europe, and I'm curious, where you see those areas of cooperation with the U.S. and places like Germany or the UK. Where do you see that happening?
I thought the most promising part of the statement today was an agreement to set up a joint task force on building manufacturing of clean energy choices. So a lot of people may have not heard of a heat pump, but it's basically a groundbreaking technology that turns an air conditioner that can cool your home backwards so it can heat your home in the winter too. It's the same device. I've got one right here.
Yeah,
it's great. and we could make them here in the United States. We make plenty of air conditioners. We have plenty of manufacturing capacity. We made a little investment. We could be producing these heat pumps and selling them to Europe, where a core part of their strategy for cutting natural gas use in buildings. Same thing for solar panels. There's investment provided in the Build Back Better Act that passed the House. That's a core part of the president's economic agenda that, if enacted by the Senate, would reshore a huge portion of solar manufacturing capacity and make that an American product. Same thing for batteries. There's battery investments going into West Virginia today that could power the cars that we're talking about for electric vehicle transition. This stuff is going to make America into a clean energy arsenal. We used to be the arsenal of democracy. We could be the clean energy manufacturing depot for the whole world, including our allies in Europe. And that's the sort of thing that's going to help Europe get off of Russian gas in just the next 5 years. It could cut, if you were to invest in vehicle electrification like we're talking about, you could cut in just the next 10 years here in the United States all oil spending by a quarter. That is huge. That means that when you go to the pump, if your neighbor got an EV, that's one less person pulling ahead of you, and your gas prices are dropping, and total spending for households and businesses could really significantly go down in just the next couple of years if we invest in accelerating the transition to electric vehicles, for example, among other things.
No, but again, what you're talking about takes visionary leadership, which I think Biden has. Problem is, we have Joe Manchin. And not just to blame Joe Manchin, an entire Republican Party hell-bent on no. Wasn't our idea, no, we're not coming along.
Right. Yeah, the Republicans are not interested in these solutions, which means that the Senate has to find a way to pass it with exactly 50 votes. There's no margin for error. And so the discussions with Senator Manchin continue on. He's said publicly that he's okay with these parts of the climate bill. He doesn't love the way that the union bonus is structured. He doesn't want the vehicles to be built necessarily by union workers, but he's okay with generally figuring out something that moves forward in this climate stuff. He's okay with the parts that support union construction in renewable energy in the electricity sector. So there's grounds for a deal here. It's not over yet. And I think that all of us ought to have the expectation that they get to work and do this, because it's really what's needed to respond to the current energy cost crisis, the current European energy crisis, and confrontations with Russia.
Yeah, without question. Things need to be done, and they need to be done soon, without question. And look, we need to get it done and quickly. But Trevor, I appreciate the thoughts, the time. Great stuff. I hope you'll come back and share some more with us as this continues down the road. And hopefully we get something accomplished.
I hope so too. Thank you very much, Rick.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Great stuff. Trevor Higgins, Vice President of Climate Policy there at the Center for American Progress. Make sure you check out their piece, Achieving Energy Independence While Supporting European Allies. We'll get links out on social media how you can check that piece out. And I don't know, maybe get a thought on how we begin to turn the corner on the fossil fuels. Love to hear your thoughts. Give me a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So last weekend I was in Boston for my son and I are both Dropkick Murphys fans. So one of the things, he's going to be 16 soon. So one of the things we've done is, we've gone to see the Murphys a couple of times. It's something father-son thing, a little bonding. Had a good weekend in Beantown. But we got to see Dropkick Murphys there in the House of Blues on their home turf. It was something we had planned before the pandemic, right when the pandemic broke. And it was one of those things when we had tickets and we're like, should we go? Shouldn't we go? Because, hey, this pandemic thing, it wasn't a pandemic yet. It was just a virus thing. We're like, should we go? Should we not? And we decided, no, we probably shouldn't. And then they canceled it anyway. But I got to throw this out. A shout out to the Dropkick Murphys for having just being good guys and being really stand-up guys. Evidently a group of neo-Nazis. These pinheads, NSC 131, they call themselves. Nationalist Social Club, I guess NSC stands for. Evidently, they were at the parade on Sunday. We didn't go to the parade. We went to the USS Constitution instead to do some sightseeing. But evidently, at the parade, they had a sign, keep Boston Irish, and, just spewing their neo-Nazi BS. and evidently used one of the Dropkick Murphy songs, The Boys Are Back, which I love, by the way. And, Ken Casey and the boys, they said they sent them a cease and desist letter, said you're going to stop it or we're going to smash you. Stop using our song for your little dress-up party video. We will smash you was the response. And good on them. Look, I love those guys. They're stand-up guys, and this again just shows that they are that. So a shout out to them. On the energy front, Germany, they've pledged to end dependence on Russian gas. They're trying to do it by mid-2024. That is going to be a Herculean leap. Now here at home, you got states who are going, wow, inflation's killing people on the gas front. At least 22 governors have proposed cutting or suspending gas taxes. There have been a number of states that have considered alleviating food costs and other things by reducing income taxes. So there's some thoughts out there. And I said this from the beginning. I thought Biden should have come out and said, look, we're cutting off the Russian gas. And to make things better, we're going to periodically release massive amounts from the strategic reserve to crush those speculators. So speculators, you're on notice. We're coming for you. And we're going to, across the board, stop federal taxes on fuel. And we're going to pursue a windfall profit tax on the oil industry to pay for it. So that, look, they're making record profits. They're not producing like they could be because, hey, they like supplies short so they can make higher profits. This is a good way to do it. Now, as Trevor pointed out, Manchin's starting to come around to the idea of the Build Back Better idea, and we talked about this the other day. He was talking at, I think it was Monday. It was at a dinner hosted by the American Clean Power Association, and he said, look, he's in favor of about $500 billion for climate, about $1 trillion in new revenue. Raising taxes on corporate America, doing a couple of things that I think needs to be done. Also, some revenue for deficit reduction, like, I don't know, allowing Medicare to negotiate for prescription drugs. I think that's a big thing. There's some stuff. Now, there's none of the human infrastructure stuff that was in Biden's Build Back Better plan that I think we desperately need. But the fact that you're talking a little bit about doing some of the renewable stuff to get us off the oil, look, whatever you can get at this moment, you got to take. You grab what you can get in this moment and you fight tomorrow for more down the road. But if you can get $500 billion today to start investing in new technologies for new construction, you start moving in directions to retrofit some buildings and move us forward. This is the way we start. But, this is where we are. You got to deal with the Manchins of the world. And until we can leap this hurdle, until we can convince people that, now is the time to get off the dirty stuff. Now is the time to get out from under the thumb of greedy oil companies. Now is the time to get out from under the thumb of dictators around the world. We're going to have to beg and plead like this. But for me, getting off the grid, making homes energy independent, this is the way forward. And it's something we should be clamoring for. We should be demanding, I tell you. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. And, oh, by the way, did I mention I've got a podcast? Yeah, you can download our podcast. Good stuff. You can do that at the website, thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. It was one of the most tragic days in U.S. labor history. 146 mostly Jewish and Italian women died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City. The death toll was so high because exits were blocked or locked and basic safety precautions were not taken in the sweatshop. Trapped by the flames, some women chose to leap out the windows to their death. Bodies fell from the sky with such force that the sidewalk cracked below. In the aftermath of the tragedy, labor organizers and social reformers pushed for workplace safety reforms. The public reacted with grief and horror at what had occurred. Moses Rosenfeld, who was known as the poet laureate of the slums and sweatshop, captured this grief in a poem he published in Yiddish on the front page of the Jewish Daily Forward 4 days after the fire. Part of the translated poem read, "Sisters mine, O my sisters, brethren, hear my sorrow. See where the dead are hidden in dark corners, where life is choked from those who labor. Oh, woe is me, and woe is to the world. On this Sabbath, when an avalanche of red blood and fire pours forth from the God of gold on high. As now my tears stream forth unceasingly, over whom shall we weep first? Over the burned ones, over those beyond recognition, over those who have been crippled or driven senseless or smashed. I weep for them all. Now let us light the holy candles and mark the sorrow of Jewish masses in darkness and poverty. This, our funeral. These, our graves, our children. The beautiful, beautiful flowers destroyed. Our lovely ones burned. Their ashes buried under a mountain of caskets. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Let's talk pills. To treat everything from allergies to heart problems, half of Americans take a prescription medicine every day, and nearly all of us reach for the pill bottle on occasion. It's perfectly safe, though, because the Food and Drug Administration regulates the ingredients that go into those medicinal compounds, right? Yes, assuming they're produced in the USA. Aren't they? Mostly, no. Take antibiotics. The New York Times reports that ingredients for the majority of these bacteria fighters are now made almost exclusively in China and India, as are the components of dozens of other major drugs. Unbeknownst to most Americans and to our doctors, China has become the world's preeminent supplier of medicines. As one major drug company puts it, if tomorrow China stopped supplying pharmaceutical ingredients, the worldwide pharmaceutical industry would collapse. What's at work here is mindless globalization and deregulation. Our politicians threw open the U.S. market to drug imports while also letting foreign manufacturers go uninspected and unregulated. So, companies located in China can cut corners and undercut our own regulated pill makers. America's last producer of penicillin's ingredients, for example, shut down in 2004, leaving us dependent on China. FDA, our supposed watchdog, doesn't even know where a drug's ingredients come from. Why? Because drug companies say they don't like to reveal their sources. So they don't. The Times found that one federal database lists the existence of about 3,000 foreign drug plants that ship to the U.S., while another lists 6,800. No one knows which is correct, if either. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is ridiculous. For the sake of America's health, security, and economy, let's regulate all pill makers and rebuild our own industry.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this week was the end of an era for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. It was like 23 years. James Hoffel was president of the Teamsters. He has retired, stepped down, and the new president, Sean O'Brien, has taken over. A Boston guy, Teamsters Local 25 up in Boston. In fact, when we were going to the USS Constitution, we drove right by their local while we were up there, and I was going, hey, that's where the new president is from. And he has vowed, UPS, you're going to pay part-timers better, and Amazon front and center, that going to be the target. And someone has to. At some point, a union the size of the Teamsters has to put the kind of resources, the kind of muscle, the kind of militancy behind organizing that behemoth, because they've been getting away with way too much for far too long. And as we see what's going on in Staten Island, the harassment, the arrests, all the craziness. Also, I understand there's a vote coming up this Tuesday, and here to share some thoughts on what's going on there, I've asked Jordan Zakarin to come talk with us. Jordan is a media producer over at More Perfect Union. You want to check out their stuff, perfectunion.us, their website. Jordan, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me as always, Rick.
So, I'm looking at, new Teamster president in, the promise, the goal, the direction, all Amazon, really. You're going to go after Amazon because that's really the behemoth. That's the elephant in the room for everything going to happen in this country.
Yeah, the election happening on Tuesday is it's an independent union. In Alabama last year, they tried to organize Bessemer, and they're still trying to do so. That was the RWDSU. This one is just an independent union called the Amazon Labor Union, and it is run by a guy named Chris Smalls, a worker who was at Amazon. I think he worked there for five years or so. Got fired after protesting their lack of COVID protocols and the outbreaks that were happening. It was early on in COVID, and Amazon just kept on grinding. No real protocols, and people got sick. He protested. That was it for him. And ever since then, he's been trying to get this place organized. And finally, they got enough cards signed. They've got a lot going up against them. But I think they've helped at very least shine a light on just how brutal Amazon can be with their brutal and offensive and cruel and just personal with their union busting.
Yeah, no, we've had Chris on the program a couple of times over the last couple of years, and yeah, his is an independent union, and that's great. We're seeing a bunch of that going on. My point was, at some point, there's got to be some resources and money and all kinds of stuff going into this, because as good of a job as Chris and that group is done, you're looking at a company that could throw $200 billion in an election like they did down in Bessemer and not blink, and then break the law at every opportunity, as they're doing in New York. And New York's one of those places where I would go, if there's any place that it should be a no-brainer, because the culture is such that the culture is a pro-union culture. You would think that would be the place that would most certainly. I'm very hopeful Tuesday that the election goes all the way I hope it does.
Yeah, and you're right about there needs to be a big organization with the resources and the militancy and the experience, like Teamsters, with the new leadership coming in as well, to go after a company like this. This is one warehouse, right, in Staten Island, the JFK 8 warehouse, the biggest one in New York. And if they do unionize it, it will be a huge national story, in the same way we've seen, Starbucks, the two in Buffalo that organized, that all of a sudden they kept rolling. But it's definitely going to require big investment. I know the Teamsters were able to help block a few different distribution centers happening that were planned for San Francisco, because they want better conditions, they want better pay, they want better better benefits for their workers, and so they're able to do that. So Teamsters already having a few small victories, which is nice to see when it comes to Amazon. But you're right, it's here in New York, it's definitely like a pro-union spirit, and I think ultimately it's a matter of, were there enough workers that were not recycled, right? That were not just taken out, were not just ground through over the last year or so since the campaign began, to really be able to stand up and vote and not be afraid of what happens, right? I think that I don't think there's any question of the excitement around it, right? They hold these rallies, they're out there every single day, they're holding rallies on the weekend, like bringing food to people. They have created a community more so than, in a great like old-fashioned union way, right? This is a movement, not just a business transaction.
No, absolutely.
And so I think the excitement is there. It's just a matter of, people been, intimidated, right? We put a video this week of like the arrest that happened. That video came out, but talking about it further and putting it in context, Chris was delivering grilled chicken and pasta to some workers, and they sent out like 5 or 6 squad cars for him at the NYPD. So it's not a question of whether they want to be unionized, it's whether they have whether they fear it or not, the consequences, I mean.
No, and this is where, the reality of this company being so large and having such resources that they can, influence police departments, as we saw in Bessemer, as we're seeing in New York. What was one of the statements by one of the police officers? Something like "We won, you lost," or something like that.
Yeah. They were shaking hands with Amazon management, and especially when you're that big of an employer in the area, you're going to have pull, right? Whether it's financial or people, you sponsor those police gathering, right? A couple of weeks ago, actually, Amazon sponsored a big meeting amongst labor lawyers and employment side labor lawyers that the NLRB actually went to, or OSHA actually went to. And so it's one of those things where they have their tentacles everywhere. And so they have a lot of people on their side. And so doing things like not filing union bust forms about how much they paid union busters for an entire year, that just gets brushed aside. There are no consequences and people overlook it. And so, it's going to also take the power of the state to say, hey, we got to stop your monopolization. We got to stop these practices. We got to make you actually responsible for the way that you hurt people.
Yeah, but again, that's going to take politicians and voters with the courage to say that this is important. I'm hoping we're getting there, because look, we're seeing tons of activity, we're seeing lots of stories, and that's great. But I'm just not seeing the political will yet.
I mean, we're not seeing political will on anything. We talk about, Clarence Thomas's wife is, trying to overthrow the White House, and there hasn't been a word about that from the White House at all. You're not hearing that from, you hear people maybe in my hallway right now in New York City, but they're all upset about it as well. The White House is in action as well. But it's, there's no political will really for anything. We haven't seen any sort of political will. So taking on Amazon is not probably at the top of the list. But, there's a new activist NLRB. Hopefully when the FTC finally gets its fifth member, the third Democrat, they can start suing and making noise about things. So, I think there's going to be hopefully some trust busters involved who want to at least start creating cracks in the foundation in the next few months at the national level.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about union busting, especially at Amazon, I like to go through some of the things that the company has done to these employees, and you guys have been covering this for a year, at least a year now. And in Bessemer, we saw people basically plastering the bathrooms with anti-union propaganda, following people around the workplace, with the kind of stuff, captive audience meetings. What kind of stuff were they pulling in Staten Island? What kind of tactics were they employing there?
Well, they keep arresting people first and foremost. But in addition to that, it's the same stuff. It's stuff putting up, captive audience meetings, putting things in the break room. There was a video that came out a few days ago of one Amazon person, someone in management there just kept taking away the brochures and union pamphlets they put out on the table. And, they caught them doing it. And I don't know if anyone cares, but, they'll do things like that. They're even doing advertisements to targeted advertisements to people Instagram, right? So you go on your Instagram, look at your Instagram stories. It'll be like, hey, don't vote for the union. Here's why the union will be bad for you. And that's Black Mirror-ish, they can target with that sort of specificity. And so it's really just I don't want to say run of the mill, but it's kind of everything, right? They're throwing everything out at people and, threatening, their jobs, threatening their livelihoods. They know that they can bring in as many people as they want. They can kick out as many people as they want. And so I think just the sheer intimidation factor that comes with it. But at the same time, New York, there's more jobs and opportunities than there are in Bessemer, Alabama. And, so I think there's a little bit less fear than there may be down there.
Yeah. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Jordan Zakarin. He's a media producer over at More Perfect Union. You want to check out the work that they do. perfectunion.us is the website. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at that. I want to change gears a little bit. A couple other victories that are going on. I saw today that the Alphabet Workers Union won their campaign. That was kind of a big story, I thought, today.
Yeah, we're seeing, as it's interesting, the union movement has always been about mostly in addition to journalists and stuff, a lot of blue collar folks, but what we're seeing is a lot of strength in people that are working in tech, right? A lot of people who are working in journalism, a lot of people who are working and, for apps and what have you. And, that Google one was a big one. They've struggled for years for the opportunity to win representation. And I think the Google Fiber was a big win, especially as they expand out that sort of retail business. And, I think the thing about Google is they're increasingly having more and more contractors, independent workers, instead of people who work at Google, which is a way to obviously pay less, a way to avoid giving benefits, and also a way to not have unions as much. And so I think beating the clock and being able to unionize while they are, maybe not at that point yet, I think is really important. And, if they can beat Google and they can win that, maybe we'll start seeing other folks, other tech companies. I know it was Kickstarter a bunch of years ago that kind of kicked off the whole tech organizing wave. And I think, I'm hopeful that we saw the New York Times tech, right? New York Times technology folks, they won their union a little while ago. And so definitely seeing a lot of movement there amongst people that, especially in this job market, have the ability to, go elsewhere and, make a good buck.
Yeah, and what it is, and this is one of those moments I've been saying, during the is the Great Resignation, or has been redubbed as the Great Reshuffle. I've been saying, look, if these people had unions, if they had contracts that they could strike, they'd be striking. They wouldn't be leaving. All these people would be out on picket lines demanding better wages, hours, conditions, because the vast majority of people, it was like, almost 60% of people leave jobs because of bad wages. They want more, they need more money. Had that been the reality, had they had unions, they'd be out on the picket line striking, not just leaving. So for me, this idea of, hey, how do we stay and make this job better? That to me is the way you go. Because look, you can go to the next place and they just change the conditions and the wages anyway. I say you stay, you fight, you change things, you make it better, one shop at a time.
No, absolutely. I think it's sort of a chicken or an egg thing, right? You got to have enough people wanting to do it. It's a long process. We've seen Starbucks people that, they still now have this larger union behind them at this point, and it still takes months and months and months for hearings. And, it's only, reports today out about the evisceration of the NLRB. So I think there needs to be like a structural, a real structural addition, structural reinforcement for unions, to make the process faster, the NLRB, to create better laws and regulations that stops companies from making it from union busting, from firing people for really any reason. And I think if they have that sort of infrastructure, they have that sort of certainty, and if it's not the most tooth pulling thing in the world, I think that'll only help. To encourage people to go do it, because it is a big undertaking. A very valuable one and worthy one. And I think the people that are sticking behind and doing it are inspiring lots of other people. So the more we can demystify it, I think, and make it easier and simplify it for people, I think better.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm hoping the head of the NLRB and her push to return to the Joy Silk doctrine. I'm hoping that happens, because I think it would streamline the process an awful lot, and stop the kind of harassment that we've seen in places like Amazon. When you come in with an overwhelming number of people who have signed up and said, yes, we want this, let's start bargaining, to then force them to go through a lengthy election and all of the intimidation and the harassment and the captive audience meetings and all of the threats and intimidation. I think that should have to stop. And I think to return to the Joy Silk doctrine would be a good step in that direction.
I mean, no question about that. And I think that would encourage a lot of people. If you look at what's happened, and I've really been focusing on Starbucks amongst the other things that I've been doing. And you look at Starbucks, they won 11-3 today, a second one in Mesa, right? That is well over the 50% plus that you need for Joy Silk. They won unanimously, like 14-0 or something like that at another recent election. And so it's not a question of will. It's a matter of infrastructure and, being able to do it without getting crushed for months and months and months and months. And, I think that people are nervous enough about unionizing. They don't do it unless they really have a lot of people behind them. And so I think that if they were to change that doctrine, I think that would make a huge difference, because the process would be so much faster. I mean, you look at the folks at Starbucks, they're holding on really strong, but people are just struggling. They have their hours cut to the bone. I was talking to people yesterday that, they went from having, 15, 20 hours to 5 one week. They'll gone from 32 hours to 14, and they can't live on that. They can't get benefits on that. Actually, those things are being put in danger. So they're being forced out. They're being forced to quit. And so ultimately, if Joy Silk is put in place, then that sort of thing can't happen, right? Like, they'll have to acknowledge the union and they're protected, and they go from there. And I think that would just be, it wouldn't fix everything, but it would be pretty revolutionary, I think, for places that really are up and excited to do this, and maybe see there's, structural hurdles that stop them, but nothing else.
And it would return people's rights. I mean, you have the right to organize today. It is your right to organize. It is not your right to sign up to get browbeaten and intimidated and your family threatened. which is what, today saying, hey, I want to join a union kind of gets you. I mean, and I think that people have internalized that. So a change, I think, would be a good thing. Last question I've got for you. Obviously, today, the 111th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. You're in New York. This is something that changed the course of work in this country. Pushed for safe working conditions. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think a lot about these things when it comes to New York and labor law and everything else. I think about, how did the city get built? Would they build a subways today? Probably not, right? Central Park probably would not happen to be privately owned. And something with the Triangle Shirt fire, the factory fire, I don't know that. I mean, it clearly created and it instigated change, just revolutionary and much needed change. But I don't know. It's cynical of me to say how much that would make a difference now. I mean, we saw Amazon factories get the roofs ripped off, people die, and it wasn't 146 people, thankfully, but a few months ago. But it sort of disappeared. There's this, people dying in masses from COVID-19 because they're on the workplace not getting proper attention, not getting proper PPE, right? And so sometimes I wonder, and this is terrible, how much our attention span and how many consequences there would be for something like that. So I think that, obviously the things that came out of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, changed the world, changed our country. And I think one thing to remember is how much attention that was drawn to that and how much difference and how many consequences there were. And to not let, when these things happen now, sort of drift and fade away from memory and fade away out of the news cycle, because, it's lives lost and it's families crushed and people hurt. And those things just carry on from there real quick. It's all over.
Wow, I actually had not thought of that, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Jordan, I appreciate the time, man. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Jordan Zakarin, media producer there at More Perfect Union. Make sure you check out the work that he does. Fantastic stuff. perfectunion.us, their website. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at their stuff. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Love to hear your thoughts. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. So more fun and entertainment with the trucker convoy. What a bunch of morons. There's a video going around, and Zach over at the Daily Beast, we had him on the program. I'm going to get Zach back to go through some of the craziness, but evidently the truckers, I guess some kid on a bike, flipped him off. Which, real truck drivers just go, yeah, somebody just flipped me off. Look, I drove a slow truck for years. Little old ladies used to give me the finger because the trucks would be going so slow uphill. You get used to it. It's just kind of, you get thick skin. But evidently these low lives, they, I guess, blocked this kid in. Citizens arrest, and there's video of him holding this kid down with his head on the ground, and I guess they stole the kid's bike. But hey, these are the trucker folk. These are the convoy folk. These are good, God-fearing, Christian, conservative America Trump folk, because they're going to change America. And what I love is the stories coming out of these things where, there was evidently a fight almost broke out because, one guy wasn't pure enough. You didn't start where I started. You're not good. You're not a certified streamer. I mean, It's crazy what these people are, because it's all about, hey, look at me at this point. It's all of them trying to be little stars. These aren't real truck drivers, because real truck drivers, they're starving. They're trying to figure out how to get to my next gig. I got to keep the wheels moving. If fuel prices are eating me up. The cost of living in a truck stop eating me up. Now, they're doing better. I mean, wages have jumped up a little bit. Truck drivers doing a little bit better, but not lighting the world on fire like they used to. You go back to the 80s when, 70s, 80s, when they were making real money. And here's where real truck drivers, they would have been, at least I would hope, would be striking for better wages, hours, and conditions. They'd be convoying and driving around DC aimlessly, wasting, a gallon of diesel at what, $5 a gallon at six miles a gallon. I mean, stop and think about that for a minute. No sane, rational truck driver is going to go, I'm just going to drive me around the city and at 6 miles, maybe 7 miles a gallon, just because I'm mad. And then I'm going to pee myself. Seriously, that I'm not smart enough to pull off to the side of the road where there's some dirt and maybe some wooded area. No, I'm just going to sit in the seat and I'm going to pee myself. These are not the top of the food chain, folks. These are not the best and brightest. These aren't the best and brightest of the trucking industry. They're the people who own the trucking companies, I guess, is what I'm being told. They own a handful of trucks. They're the ones who, at least that's what I'm being told. I don't even know that that's probably accurate. But these are the people that I fear the most, because they've been told for so long that they're special, that they're entitled, that they're privileged, that they're somebody, that they believe that the country is being stolen from them. And damn it, they're going to fight to keep their country. And, we've heard the talk. They're going to have citizens arrest. They're going to go arrest Washington policemen. They're going to go and try and arrest the mayor of D.C. Go ahead. I mean, they had a hard enough time with the kid on the bike. But it's this kind of vigilante activism that's frightening, because it's going to filter down. And as we talked about earlier, these people who think that, hey, I can go bounty hunting and I'm going to go find whatever it's going to be next. And this is where these people start, when this mob mentality takes over, because they're in their little clique, they're with each other now. This is where things get out of hand. There's an interesting story I read from a guy in Canada. He's now regretting, he's lost everything. Lost all his money, lost his apartment, he's lost everything. And I now regret it. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I just wanted to be helpful. All of that stuff. Once he got away from the mob mentality, would have never done the things he did individually. And I would argue that, on January 6th, there was probably some of that happened. When these mental geniuses find each other, they all go down the rabbit hole together. And when our Mensa members come together, not good things happen. It's going to be interesting to see what they do over the next several days as people continue to ridicule them and mock them. Because look, if you're still driving around the city wet in your pants, you deserve to be mocked. Sorry. Just there's no excuse whatsoever for that, other than maybe you shouldn't have gotten out of kindergarten. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, the podcast, I'm sure you've heard that we have a podcast. Make sure you download that, share it with your friends, take the program on the go wherever you go. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.